here with Alexa Pano. Alexa, let's start with the most important question. Are the New England Patriots for real? There's a lot of questions if they're for real. Are they for real?
I think we're so back. I mean, 10 games,
Oh, all right.
10-2, that kind of speaks for itself. So,
Yeah, all right. Obviously, you're happy with Vrabel. So, for those listening, Alexa's sponsored by the Patriots. Goes to how many games? I've seen like at least a couple you've been to this year.
yeah, I somehow ended up at one of their losses this year.
Oh,
And then
unfortunate.
I'm actually flying out after Thanksgiving back home, and I'm gonna go to the Monday night game against the Giants. So hopefully I'll get to see a win this year.
If
But
they lose there, Alexa, it might be your last game of the season,
I know
though.
my dad might stop letting me go.
Yeah, 100%. How long has your dad had like been? We've talked about this in the last pod, but how long has your dad had season tickets?
Over 40 years now, which is
Yeah,
kind of crazy.
yeah. He's seen the bad and the good. Uh,
Yes, which he's very excited for this good. So
yeah, yeah. It's been a little bit when you're used to winning Super Bowls all the time. I assume this stretch has been a little rough on him from the standpoint of
definitely.
yeah. All right, Alexa, let's get into the season. Finished 97th on the money list. I would assume that this is the first year in your life that you have not been on this upward trajectory. What is this off season like? How do you assess your season? And is it hard mentally to be is that part of your off season is like what needs to change in your game, but also is it hard to be like, man, I've my entire life, you're only 21, but like on your entire life, you've been on this upward trajectory. And this is the first year that like you've had a little bit of a downward turn. How does that, has that affected you mentally? Is that hard to kind of get your head around or no?
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good question. You know, I dealt with a lot this year that I feel like contributed to kind of some of the downward play, but at the same time, I think that for a lot of time in my life, there hasn't been any want for me to make change. I'm very stubborn, and but you know, when you kind of have an off season like this, it's like, why would I want to stay the same? I want to get better. And so I think in the beginning, I was pretty sick mid-season, and I was like getting really down about the fact that I hadn't had good finishes and whatnot. And then when I got back from Hawaii, knowing I was going to have one, maybe two events left in the season, depending on if I got into Asia, that's when my perspective kind of switched. And it was like, this is a really good opportunity to start with kind of a blank slate and make some changes, and it can only go up. And I really took that perspective into the final week. And I think it was the most confident I'd felt prior to a golf tournament in a really long time. And there was no doubt in my mind that I was going to play well that week. And that was a really good feeling that um, kind of made me embrace the idea of change a bit more. And so I think I'm really excited for this off season to kind of dive more into that and implement more of those changes and just not being afraid of doing something different this off season.
When you say changes, Alexa, what you haven't, you just said like you haven't changed. Who, what, how did you get to what you needed to change? And I assume as a pro, you have access to relatively any other coach, any mental coach. It's instead of like from a lot of golfers, it's hard to find someone that fits. You're on the opposite side. You have at your disposal anybody you want. What was the process like of getting just assessing the change, what you needed to change, and how you go about doing that? I assume that's a long process when you have access to so much.
Yeah, I think, like you said, having access to a lot is it's very different. Like growing up, I didn't have access to all those things, so it is very different now having access to all those things. But you really have to learn how to use coaches and mental coaches wisely and to benefit you. I think realizing that you need to make changes really comes from looking within yourself, whether it's at statistics, having hard conversations with people, making sure you have people surrounding you that can be honest with you. And I feel like I do have a really good team around me. But for me this year, I'd say the game changer was starting working with a mental coach, Greg Carton. And um, he changed a lot of perspectives for me. Like I said, I dealt with stuff in the season, got into a really dark place, and I could have easily stayed there. Um, but I didn't want to stay there. I love playing on the LPGA tour. I love competing at the highest level, and I knew that I wanted to do that to the best of my ability. And I feel like he's really helped me get there and get out of my own way a little bit.
When you say dark place, Alexa, is that off the course, on the course? Does the dark place come because of the play, or bad play come because you're struggling with mental health? Where does that, or is it that line blurred?
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of both. I think I like I said, I was really sick for months this year, um and I kind of couldn't tell what it was. Um when I had my issues this year, it like I couldn't tell whether I was upset because of my golf or if I was just tired because I'd been sick for so long. And it was a really blurred line, but I think the past few weeks where I've been at home and grinding really showed me that that I still had that love for the game. And especially once I got out to Pelican, the final event, and like was hitting those meaningful shots, I was like, oh yeah, it wasn't the love for the game. That was always there. I'm addicted to the adrenaline of needing to hit a good shot and all of that. And so um it's a very blurry line because you can love the game and hate playing bad at the same time. And that's kind of where I stood. But you kind of just have to go back to being kind of that childlike and loving it no matter how you perform. And I think that's kind of when you can perform your best, when you can put the results oriented parts of your mind aside, or even just focus on the little victories rather than if I don't win this golf tournament, it was a failure. And just kind of simplifying it like that for me was something that was really helpful.
Do you just have to take time to assess, Alexa, whether you've don't like the game? When you're struggling, no one likes the game, and that's easy to say, hey, you can't make a rational decision. And it can be on the other side when you're playing great, winning every week, and all the things that come along with that, money and all of those things is good. It's hard to assess your love of the game. How do you do it? Do you just try to get away from some of the bad finishes or good finishes and really just take, back to your point, like you're on the range grinding alone? Those are the times that you have to love, or it's not going to work out, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of self-reflection goes on throughout the season, and um even just conversations I've had with other girls, you really have to assess where you're at. Like you said, when you're playing good and when you're playing bad, it's not just when you're struggling. Golf is a really tough game. The schedule that we play is very difficult. And so for me, it's kind of tough to see where I'm at when I'm bouncing each and every week and not having any like kind of break to kind of get away from the game and see how I feel. Um, and I think that's something I'll work on going forward, not signing up for every event that they let me into.
Yeah.
But it definitely was helpful not getting into the first few, well, any of the events in Asia, but I was first alternate for the last one, so I did go. But not getting into the events in Asia really was a blessing in disguise for me because it gave me that time to kind of like fall in love with the little things like working on my game again, um, like you said, kind of being out on the range alone and just obsessing over the game and remembering what I loved so much about it.
I mean, the women's game, Alexa, and your career is a good example. I think most people who are listening would be like, "Oh, Alexa's been around forever." Obviously, part of that comes from you being on Netflix at a young age, but even your pro career, I was like looking back on your stats, you're like, feels like you've been longer than 3 years on the PGA or LPGA. But it's unique to the women's game that you are growing up as an individual and growing in the game. Is that hard to find? Like, you were a kid, you're now 21. Is that hard? Alexa, looking back, is like growing up in a very adult environment has to be difficult at times. Is that part of the struggle of whether you love the game or not?
I think honestly, looking back at my junior career, even like early days as a pro, whether it was Epson Tour, there's always kind of different struggles, but even when you're playing great, there's a different idea of a struggle, whether it's you're worried about playing good the next week or living up to expectations. So I do think that there's always going to be a struggle no matter where you're at, or always some idea that you're telling yourself. Um, but for me, looking back on my junior and amateur and early pro career is like a positive thing. I love reminiscing over those things, but also trying not to get too stuck in the idea of repeating the same things. I'm very different than I was as a rookie. I'm very different, obviously, than I was at 15. And things have to be done differently, but it still feels good to kind of look back on those and know exactly what I'm capable of and look ahead and know how much more I'm capable of.
Let's talk LPGA in general. Claire Rogers from golf.com does this thing where the little cartoon plane travels. I mean, there's no tour in the entire world that is remotely close. I think back to your point about maybe not playing every event you're in, is that what you have to do, Alexa, with a schedule that has, I mean, literally you cross the world and the United States at 2 week stretches all the time? Is that kind of what you've learned the process of playing is like, hey, there's times that, yes, I'd love to go play a no cut event in Asia, but it might be time to like just take some rest.
Yeah, I think it's really important to know your limits. And from talking and learning from other girls on the tour, it's really important to set a schedule and really stick to it. And I think that's one of the things that I need to work on this off season. I just love competing so much that I'm like, okay, if I don't go play, I'm going to regret it, or that was going to be my week. And so a lot of times I'll push myself to the point where I'm putting out like lower quality performances and just kind of like making a lot of cuts but not doing much with it. And it's really tough to know when sometimes it's time to go home and practice and work on your game, or even just go home and take a week to kind of exist, unpack your suitcase. And it's a tough balance, because you do have to get the results, you do have to play good. And so um, it's really hard to decide, but I do think, especially after this past year for me, it showed the benefits to good rest and good quality golf over quantity.
And I think, Alexa, that probably speaks to the schedule down the road being a little more reasonable, because Nellie's going to skip events. Um, whoever top players are going to skip events because the schedule is just too physically taxing on anyone to
Yeah.
go travel every event. That would be the advantage of getting the schedule in a more regionalized. I know you guys are at a more international level. You have more international players, so you have to play more internationally. Totally understand it. Totally get it. It just has to be, in my opinion, more like here for 3 weeks, an off week. It has to be that, and that's the downside, right, Alexa, is that not everybody's going to play every week. And
Yeah.
as the LPGA continues to grow, that's what they need, is a majority of the top women playing more often.
Totally. I think, kind of similar to in basketball, when you want to see your favorite players playing. If you buy a ticket to a basketball game, you want to see LeBron James playing. You don't want to go to a game where he's on the bench. And so it's obviously very tough. People want to see Nelly, people want to see Lydia, and with the schedule, it's tough for them to play a jam-packed schedule, and or for anyone to play every event all year is borderline impossible.
Yeah.
And I do have a lot of faith in our new commissioner. I feel like he has a lot of good ideas, and obviously stepped into a situation that wasn't really changeable in the amount of time that he's been here. But I would say that's probably a pretty big priority on everyone's mind, because while the events where the field goes a bit deeper and you get to see some new players are, I think, crucial to the LPGA or any tour. You do have to have your top players having the ability to come and perform because those are the people that people want to see, and got to give the fans what they want.
Mark and I talked about this on our pod. I don't know Craig, I haven't talked to him, but
Hmm.
the fact that his first major thing was an investment in the TV product is, to me, a great step. Not that I don't want pros to be taken care of, but the PGA Tour has put too much of their resources into taking care of the players. It's whole deep. I get it in some respects. There's a competitor,
Yeah.
but his first main announcement was like, "We need more cameras. We need more things." I mean, I assume those conversations were happening on the range well before this. Is like, we need to invest in our product, right, Alexa? No matter what each individual player thought, like, you have to have more cameras. You have to have better coverage in order to draw people into watching great play.
Yeah, totally. I think, like you said, with that being his first move, I think it shows that he's kind of listening to what the players are saying. Um, the only way you're going to get new fans, new sponsors, new people engaged, or if they can watch the product. And I think the LPGA's tour product and talent is so good. I mean, I'm a sports fanatic. I watch a lot of sports, whether it's whatever it is, and I think the LPGA is right up there with some of the best talent in women's sports. And I think if we're able to showcase that better and get more people watching, more eyes on the game, that's going to be where you kind of see the money coming back into the players. Um, I think it's a great place to start for him as a commissioner, and I do think he's off to a really great start. Um, and yeah, like I said, I think it just really shows that he listened to the players that he met with first. I haven't gotten a chance to talk to him, but I know that this has been something that we've been saying for a really long time now. And so to see strides already being made to improve that it's a really fun time and a really cool thing to see.
As part of that release, Alexa, and I think you can give great perspective on this because you've lived a large portion of your golf life on camera, and that included off the course. Like, people covered your entire junior career for the most part. So he said deep storytelling, more to get to know the players. And this is not a pro's fault. This is everyone's fault. Media, the tour sponsors, is there's not a lot of vulnerability on the LPGA, and you've lived your life that. And again, I'm not blaming players. It's like, for instance, I have a lot of trust with Corn Ferry players because I spent a lot of time there. I haven't
Yeah.
built that trust up enough on the LPGA for someone to, with enough players, for someone to tell me that they're in a bad mental state or this happened at a tournament or whatever. So this is everyone has to buy in.
Yeah.
So how do we create that vulnerability for people to know that you had a tough mental side, or that person had this go on, or that adversity? Golf in general is scared of telling these stories, but the LPGA has definitely put like a shell over it. And I think because it's a great sport, and like, to your point, to me, it's probably the best women's sport that there is, because it's like, you guys can compete with men on the right course at the right time, no problem. And I'm talking other pros. So how do we do that? I know that's a big question, Alexa. How do we get pros to be more vulnerable?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting topic. It's I feel like, not to say it's a more useful thing, but definitely you see younger generations kind of leaning into that more, whether it's on social media or um, just different, more vulnerable topics. I feel like are a bit more normalized across social media platforms, talking to each other, things like that. And I think if the more that professional athletes kind of lean into that, the more you kind of gain new fans or a new audience. Um, I know just from like you said, growing up through the Netflix world or growing up on social media, you see the impact that it has. I mean, YouTube golf is in an amazing place to the point where I'm watching it.
Yeah.
And I think being able to see personalities and um, relatable people, relatable stories is something that the younger generation really leans into, and it gets a lot of attention on things. And when you get more attention, that's when you get um, the more money that players are wanting. And so I think it's kind of like a give and take. Like if you want things to be better, you kind of have to lean into this, lean into what
Mhm.
everyone's doing. And so, like I said, it's a really exciting time. I think there's so many good opportunities for players, for sponsors, um, even people who aren't on the LPGA tour and are just in some sort of golf realm. I just think it's a really exciting time for the game just in general.
Yeah. I mean, Charlie Hull is a great example of, to me, of what the LPGA can be. And again, this is not a one-way street. This is media, TV, sponsors, everybody being okay with players just being themselves. Like Charlie creates emotion. A lot of
Yeah.
people like her, some people don't like her, and that's okay. That's
Yeah.
what that like Bryson is a great example. Bryson is a villain, but he creates emotion. I say often, like when he was on the PGA Tour at Bay Hill trying to hit it across the water, a lot of people hated him. A lot of people, some people liked him, but we were all watching. And
Mhm.
so that's the vulnerability that we have to dig into, and that is not just the players. It's media going out more often, all of those things, because it's okay to not to the women's game deserves to be covered as a major sport that it is. That comes with criticism, that comes with people saying stuff, like it comes with all of those things that will take time to do it, but it deserves it. Is that how you feel, Alexa? It deserves to be covered as a major sport that it is.
Yeah, 100%. Couldn't have said it any better. I think Charlie really is a perfect example because she's always been authentically herself, but media started covering it and people started noticing, and now it's become what it is to the point where she's in Happy Gilmore's and she's getting noticed, but she's always been herself. It just wasn't covered in the way that it is being now. And so I think it really shows how big of a two-way street it really is if you can lean into it, but also the media is leaning into it as well, and the sponsors are leaning in. And I just think it all comes together to be a really cool thing. But like you said, everything comes with both sides of the coin. So people are going to love it and people are going to hate it. I think kind of an interesting thing was at the Annika inviting Kai Trump. A lot of people didn't like it. A lot of people did like it. But I promise you, everyone was watching. Everyone
Yeah.
wanted to see what she shot. Everyone was tuned in. And whether you like it or hate it, it's more eyes on the LPGA tour. And that I can't think of a bigger goal than that.
Yeah, that's the emotion we need to create on the LPGA tour. And it's there. It's already there. Again, it takes a lot of partners to make that happen. All right, back to you, Alexa. What's the off season look like? So, how do you find that balance of rest and then getting ready for the new start of the season? Are you like a player that just puts your clubs away for X amount, or are you like, oh, I'll take this week easy and then build up to as the season starts? You're just pretty consistent.
Yeah, I think last year was my first true kind of off season. Before that, my rookie year, I had qualifying school, and then there was always something. Last year was the first true off season, and I'd heard a lot of things from girls who were like, "Oh, I put my clubs away for a couple weeks," or "Oh, I do this, I do that," and I didn't really know what to do. I don't feel like I handled it the way, like I just had no idea what I was doing. It was my first time experiencing it, and I handled it how I thought I should, but I kind of put the clubs away for a week and then eased back into it. But that's not really me, I would say. I love playing golf. Um, and it's my hobby as much as it is my job. And so I have taken, well, I did go play golf the first few days after the Annika, but I took a few days off to go see some friends. I'll start playing again and then I'll take a couple days off. And then I think like mid-December is when I'll probably ramp back up into getting into full practices. But truly, it's not because I feel like I do have a longer off season this year, but it's just because I enjoy it and I love practicing. And like I said, I truly am excited for my future in the game. I think I ended the year in a really good place with my game, but with a lot of room for improvement, and that kind of excites me. And yeah, I think it's less fear of change and more like I'm very excited to get to work and make these changes.
What does are you a goals related person, like write down 1 to 10, or are you like, I just want to be playing well and shit will take care of itself if I'm
Yeah.
playing well?
Um, I don't know. I think I'm a good mixture of both. I got a little bit more into like goals, smaller goals towards the end of the year. And I think that that's something that I'll lean into before going into the next season if I can accomplish some things. But I definitely think last year I went into the off season kind of being like, oh, I just want to be playing good, feeling good. But I do think I'll be a little bit more strategic with it this year, knowing what I need to be better at before going into the next season. And um, obviously, I'd like to be playing my best before going into that first event. But there's a lot of things that I can be better at. And so just narrowing in on those things is what I think will be important for me.
Alexa, you're the best. You and I have, this is the second time you've been on the pod. I appreciate it. You
Yeah.
are awesome. I appreciate your honesty about your struggles this season and always pulling for you. You know that. And thank you. Thanks for the time.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Alexa.